Today we're going to be making fish wafers. With any tank, you've got to keep your nitrites, nitrates, and everything. If you watch the one on filtration, you'll understand it better, or the video on filtration. But one way that I do this is you've got to regulate how many fish is in your tank. Now, my fish are happy fish. That's because they have plenty of room, the water, everything is kept to an optimum for them. And as you can tell, they have lots and lots of little babies. Problem is, I cannot have lots and lots of little babies in here because I've only got so much tank space. So what I do is any excess fish that's born, I'm not going to just give them away or sell them to people that's going to abuse them. I'm not going to take them down to the pet shop and give the fish to them for free that they're going to sell to somebody at some high price to make a profit, and those people then abuse the fish because they don't have the right size tank or whatever, and the fish lives its very short life in stress and or pain. So what I do is I keep a live catch net that I made. It's right here. This floats around, and it's a little sieve net that goes into a cone, and so all the little fish will swim into there. Some of the larger fish as well, and I will capture them. They then go into a bucket. I separate out the ones that I want to put back in, like that male. See that male there? And so I can regulate. I pick them by color. I pick them by their healthiness. They go back in to get matched with the females. And if you've got a good tank and happy fish, they're going to mate. You're not going to be able to avoid it with most species. So what I do is anything that I pull out gets frozen. Later I dehydrate them, grind them up, and turn them into protein powder that goes back into my fish wafers. You'll notice this green stuff here. This is duckweed. Duckweed is very high in protein as well, about 45%. The problem with duckweed is it's considered by most people to be a pest because it will literally take, I've already scooped out about 3 or 4 liters of this stuff. And by liters, I mean I scoop it, I drain it, and I've got a 1 liter container full of this. And I already got 4 out to clean this area up. And it will grow back. But once again, I'm going to dehydrate that, grind it up, and it goes into my fish wafers. So I've got plant fiber, I've got the animal proteins, I've got any leftover vegetables and so on that's not had sauces or anything cooked with them. So leftover salad. They really like cucumber, they like zucchini, they like Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and I'll just cut the stuff up and give it to them raw. And they really like it. So they get a diverse diet. I've got the float wood in here for the plecos and the snails and stuff. In here I have red shrimp, fire shrimp, blue shrimp, gray shrimp. We've got the fan-tailed guppies. Oh, there goes right there. There goes a little baby pleco. We've got bristlenose or bearded plecos. We've got a pair of common plecos. In here I've also got 1 albino pleco. There's the baby pleco. And I'll be getting a female albino, so he's got a mate, so they're not alone. So I keep them paired. Down in the bottom, I've got some other different bottom-dwelling fish that are school fish. So there's at least 8 or so of them in a school at any given time. And so they're going to breed. So I take them out, put them into the freezer, kill them humanely, put them into the freezer, freeze them, and then later I dehydrate them, grind them up, along with the duckweed and so on, and that goes into the rest of the mixture. And we'll get more into that in a minute. So let's go ahead and pull this for today and see what's in there. This also gives me a way to capture some of the fish with little to no stress and be able to check them for diseases and other things. In a tank this size, you're not going to be able to sit on the side and eyeball a fish. Okay? So this is one way I take care of that. So today, we've got some plecos. They're not quite big enough to... That looks like he's going to be a male. That's a female. Down here you see we've got some little shrimps. So the one male here, he'll go back in. The male pleco and one that I think is a female will go back in. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't remember those having such long antennas. I think a shrimp has taken over his pod, but he's going to go back in. So, we will scoop out the ones that we're going to keep. The rest gets drained off, goes in, killed, goes to the freezer, and gets turned into fish meal. And that's how I do that. Okay, kitchen's a mess. We're doing fish food the last couple of days. People have asked how I make my fish wafers. Well, I am not prescribing to any particular brand. This is what I get. I get the Tetra pot sticks, and I grind them up to a powder. Half of it goes to feed the fish normally. The other half comes in to get wafers made. Now in this is also my my dried duckweed. This is also all of our leftover, like if we have carrots, a salad, anything that doesn't have sauces. Okay, before you put the salad dressing or anything on it. Anything that's left over as far as vegetables and such, except onions, you really want to stay away from onions. But cucumber, zucchini, squash, lettuce, anything like this, shredded carrot, all gets dehydrated, powdered up, and thrown in here as well. In this also goes all of my fish. And what I do, that's what's left of my, this is starting this month. So normally this bag was almost full. And so I would dry those, dehydrate them, they get ground up, they go in here also. This adds proteins, it adds vegetable matter, all sorts of stuff in here, which is good things for the fish. Also for my crayfish, shrimps, all of that. With this now, for each cup of this, we're going to add a cup of flour. Normally I do not like using white flour, but this flour's got contaminated with meal bugs. So instead of throwing it away, I'm just going to use this as my base this time. Normally I use a all brown ground flour, rice flour, something that's a bit more nutritious, because I've learned how they make this white flour and it's horrible. So we're going to do a cup of this, and for each of those we're going to do 1.5 to 2 eggs. So we're doing basically an egg for each cup of material put into the bowl. We need a mixer. You need some baking paper. You need a rolling pin and a knife to cut things with. I'm going to use just a pizza cutter and roll across it, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's get this mixed in and find out how many eggs we need. Alright, so there we go. You can see the little weevils that were in the flour. We're going to be using about 30 eggs for this entire mixture. So I've got this full, and I've still got more over here. We're going to mix in about 30 eggs, blend this up. Also, I raised mealworms. So this has my dehydrated and ground up mealworms and everything in here. So just so you have an idea, this is not a precise recipe per se, but it allows me to recycle all of my leftovers. There's no meat in here. No meat. Meats have steroids, antibiotics, and everything else that they put into it that can affect your fish. So I don't use that. But fresh vegetables that's been left over, boiled vegetables, anything like that, that I know is okay for the plecos and everything, because most of my fish are omnivores, gets mixed in with this. So let's get the eggs in and then see where we go from there. Okay, another interesting fact that I have found out, and I want to pass this along with a important pH tip. Eggshells is calcium. Calcium will affect the pH in your water. The oils and stuff in this is not processed. It will affect the nitrite and the nitrates in your water. So you have to really keep these, you have to keep check on this if you're going to be doing anything that's homemade. The next thing is fish food. Here's what happens with fish food. And this is this is an occurrence I know in the industrial, because I researched it. And basically, one of the things that they put in this stuff, and they don't have to really list the chemicals because it's not a food item for human consumption, but one of the things that they put in here is a preservative. The preservative is regulated by the FDA. The reason is too much of it can be hazardous to the human body, or really to anything. But here's what happens. They make the meal, they make their pellets, and they use the leftover fish from the filleting process, the scales, the skin, the heads, the bones, whatever. They dry the stuff, they grind it all up, and it goes back into processing to make the protein for the fishies. Okay? You got a certain fat count and protein count. Okay? And then they add this chemical to it to keep the oils and fats that's in it from spoiling. Think of it like a preservative. But too much of this is hazardous. They feed this to the next fish on the fish farm. The fish eat it, they absorb the chemical. It is not completely doused out of their system. We know this due to microplastics, chemical checks, and everything else that's done nowadays. And so it builds up in the fish. Remember, they're not growing these fish like you would for an aquarium, where you want the fish to live 5, 10, 20 years. They're pumping them full of stuff to get them to grow as fast as possible, to take them out to the market and kill them. So they've eaten the stuff, they've eaten the chemicals in the pellets and so on. It's in their system. They fillet all the fish and stuff. The rest of the fish comes back to be made into the meal, but it's already got the chemical in it. At this point, though, the way that it's regulated, it says that they can put so much of the chemical in the feed. So they put more of the chemical in the feed that's within legal boundaries. They reprocess it, they send it out, and they feed it to the next batch of fish. Well, over time, they're not measuring the quantity, as I understand it, they're not measuring the quantity of that chemical in the dried or the pellets. They're measuring how much is added when they're creating the pellets. So actually you have it gradually over time builds up in the system. I'm sure that they have some checks and balances somewhere to allot for this, but I've not really found much on the information. And this is why I like to reduce the amount of pellets and stuff that I feed to my fish that's commercial, because I realize it's got stuff in there that's really not good for the fish, nor for me if I'm eating the fish, the crayfish or whatever. So, be aware of that. Be aware that you're adding eggshell. It's real good for the calcium, for the bones and stuff for the fish in case they're getting an iron depletion or whatever. However, at the same time, it's going to affect your pH, and it will have an effect on your nitrate and nitrites because all of it's not going to be eaten. Okay? So you really need a good water testing system. I test mine once a week. So onward, we're going to blend all this up and get it ready for the next phase. I would feel remiss if I did not say this. I've had people go, well, why don't you just, if you're making your own stuff, why not just make your animals a vegetarian? I mean, my whole family's a vegetarian. Even my dog's a vegetarian. My cat's a vegetarian. People, the animals do that because they're trying to survive. They're trying to live, plain and simple. Okay? They are in a contained environment. They only get access to what you give them to, and any animal is going to eat whatever's available if it is hungry enough. Does not mean that it's good for it. It does not mean that it's the best thing for it, only that the animal has no other choice. Case in point, during World War II, they were mixing sawdust with their flour in Europe to extend the bread production. Was it good for them? No. But, okay, the people were hungry. People were chewing bark off of trees, eating grass. They would chew paper. Is it good for you? No, but an animal, even a human, even a straight carnivore, will eat anything it can if it is hungry enough or if it's the only thing available to it. It's just the instinct of survival. It does not mean that you're doing your animal any good. Please don't treat your aquarium that way as well. One of the little quotes from the Battlestar Galactica series was Adama asked Ty, he says, I hear people are eating paper now. And he says, no, not anymore. He goes, oh, they quit? He says, yeah, paper shortage. All right. Do not make a shortage of a well-blended mixture for your aquarium. I've got plant proteins in here. I've got animal proteins. The eggs and the flour, the gluten in the flour, the protein in the eggs acts as a binder and has other nutrients in it. I've got over here, my tank is 3 meters by 2 meters, rectangular. And I break this into 1 meter squares. And what I will do, let me get this out here. This is a stainless steel fork. I drilled a hole through it, wrapped the line, it's got a bobber on it. That way I just grab the bobber off the top of the water. But on this I will regularly put slices of zucchini, squash, radish leaves, regular lettuce leaves. Let's see, what else have I put on there? Brussels sprouts. Parboil your Brussels sprouts. They like it better that way. Anything of this sort. Okay, I do not use radishes. I do not use onions doing that. It's just, I've read that it's bad for the animals. But then the rest of anything that's not eaten comes up with the fork, or I have to clean up off the bottom. Again, nitrate, nitrites, ammonia levels. But you have a lot of different ways to naturally do this for your fish. Just don't feed them against what they should be getting in their natural environment, please. So now we have everything mixed up, and you notice it's still dry, okay? If it's too dry, I add water. If it is too moist, I add a little bit more meal. This is too dry, so we're going to add water. However, case in point, water has all sorts of crap in it, okay? And I prefer, when I'm doing my mixtures or anything, to use distilled water. So what I did is I went and bought one of these 12-liter containers. This originally was supposed to be a distiller. And it, on the top it had a thing where the water came in, the water came out for the cooling and all of that. I got rid of that. I created a lid that this gets welded onto. Then I took an old water distiller, and it fits on there. Okay, oops. Come on, come around. There we go. There. So it's purely electric. There's no water in, no water out. Everything is done by the coil and the cooling fan inside here. And then that way I can just catch my distilled water, and I can do 12 liters at a time. This removes all of the water additives, a good 90+% of its impurities. This includes possible chemicals that's been added to, like chlorine, calcium scrubbers. They, depending on where you're at, they will also add chemicals to keep lead from leaching out of the pipings and into the water to a certain extent. All of that, the majority of it, will be contained in here, and I will have 12 liters of distilled water coming out. It takes a couple of hours to do 12 liters, but it's well worth it. Also, the where I'm at is heavy water. It's got a lot of calcium and other stuff in it. And if I'm using that and putting it into the water, I'm also changing my water balance, my pH balance, my hardness and such. So this helps remove that possibility as well. Once I started really kneading in the dough, I actually started to have to add more rice meal because it was still really wet in the center. These are about to go in to get boiled. We are now going to cut our squares. As you can tell, it's a fairly thick dough. You'll notice none of these are precise size. They're all different sizes. And we're going to drop it into the water. I use this. You slowly stir it so they do not stick together, nor on the bottom. Think of it as cooking noodles or dumplings. Once they start floating, I give it another 5 seconds or so that they're cooked. Then I remove them and I put them over onto the drain pan to drain. So let's give this a go. Depending upon the thickness and the size, depends on the cooking time. But they should start floating in a moment or two. It takes 30 to 60 seconds. And you'll start seeing them. There they go. They're starting to float. Making sure that they don't stick. Once they start floating, then I give them another 5 5-10 seconds max. If you boil them too much, they'll start disintegrating on you and getting mushy. So once they're done, these come out. They go onto the drain, and then they go to the dehydrator. That's it. Okay, so this is the finished product. These will go in the freezer. I'll only pull out a certain amount at any given time because I'm making a real large batch. Right here is close to 200. Okay. No, sorry, close to 100. 20, 40, 60, 80. Yeah, about 100. And I've still got at least 3 or 4 more, so I'll wind up with about 400 of these. Then what I will do is when I go to feed them, I will break this down into 4 pieces. And they're really hard. I'll break them into 4 pieces and then put them in. Otherwise, as they start rehydrating, I've found that sometimes they'll float. And we don't, I mean, the upper strata fish will eat them then as well. But if you break them into, say, 4 pieces about this size, then it works much better. Yeah. So there you go.